welcome Donna Ward today. Donna is the chair of voter services at the Montclair Area League of Women Voters. And she is here to talk to us about voting, registering and voting. So this is part of that Nourish, and it's part of a three-session series sort of leading up to the high holidays. And so I just wanted to sort of situate you a little bit about why are we talking about voting within that. So, whoops, did I, you admit it. So, this time of the year we reflect, and there's a lot of things that we think about. We reflect on, we can our gratitude, our humility, and try and evaluate how we might have been sort of for each of those attributes, and characteristics. And I think another thing that we can add to that mix is about engaging with our larger society. When we think about, are we sort of happy with how we are situating ourselves in that context, as well as how are we reflecting on our own character and such. That's part of our relationship with other people. So we situated this particular talk within Tikkun Olam, repairing the world is often how that is translated. That's a value, and it's, I think, a value that reflects our coming together as a community to accomplish things and to get things done. And I think that voting is very much within that context, because it's each of us adding our own voices. And one voice in and of itself may not accomplish anything much, but when we add all of our voices together, we can have a very big impact. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Donna, who's going to talk for a bit, and then we'll do some questions and answers. And I'll ask you to post your questions in the chat. And after Donna is finished with her presentation, I'll go into the chat and I'll either read your question or I'll ask you to sort of read your own question. We'll see how it goes. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Sarita. And again, thanks so much again for inviting me to talk to you all tonight. As Sarita said, I'm Donna Ward. I'm the chair of voter services for the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area. And so we cover about 10 towns in Essex County. We're proud to say we're now the largest league in New Jersey, so with the most members, and we've grown quite a bit over the last couple of years. I think a mark of the level of engagement that people are having with what's going on, in the world, and the need to be involved. And it's gratifying that, the league at 100 years old this year, 100 years old, the same age as the 19th Amendment. Yes, exactly. And the league was formed actually to help women understand their responsibilities now that they were going to get the vote, as part of the 19th Amendment. And by the way, the league is open to both men and women. So for the gentlemen here tonight, I'm going to make an invitation to all of you to join the league. I know Carolyn Lack is a member already, but for those of you who won't, we're happy to have both men and women to join the league. And we're probably the largest and most effective grassroots organization in the U.S. And there's quite a lot that we do, including having been involved in the lead up to the November election, which I'll talk a little bit about. And so what I was going to do tonight was kind of share with you some of the nuts and bolts, so you're an informed voter going into November about how the election in New Jersey is going to run, and then maybe at the end talk a little bit about how you can get engaged if you want to. So with that, of course, I have PowerPoint slides. I spent 35 years in corporate America, so I can't talk at all about some PowerPoint slides. So I will share those with you. Okay. So as I said, this is an update on the election process in New Jersey. I'm going to give you some of the latest news on a lot of changes that have happened to how we vote in November, almost exclusively because of the impact of the COVID pandemic on us, and the decision by Governor Murphy to balance public health with voter access and tipping the battle towards public health and making this a vote by mail, exclusively vote by mail election. And then, as I said, how you can help. So maybe just a little background before we get into some of the nuts and bolts. I mentioned that the League is very involved in New Jersey with ensuring fair and accurate elections. And we've been involved, we've been a participant with the NAACP on a number of lawsuits trying to correct some of the issues with the vote by mail process that were seen in the May special elections, which were municipal elections, and then the July primaries. So the League and the NAACP actually had lawsuits to do things like extend the amount of time that ballots would be accepted. Just to give you some context, May was the first all vote by mail election in New Jersey, and that was a number of municipal elections. And in Montclair, we had our regular municipal elections, which is all vote by mail. And the average for those May elections was about 10% of ballots rejected, which is, as you can imagine, a very high number. And they were rejected for a number of reasons. Either ballots were missing signatures, ballots had mismatched signatures, meaning the signature that was on the ballot was not signed in the same way that was recorded in the poll books. There were missing postmarks. There were ballots that had postmarks and were postmarked in time, but were received too late after the cutoff for the deadline, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that resulted in about 10% of the ballots being rejected, which is way too high a number. So a number of changes were made for July. We also did the League of Women Voters in New Jersey did a voter survey to help give feedback to the state on enhancements, and now those are reflected. So if May and July were kind of the dress rehearsals to November, a lot of changes now are made yet again for the November elections to make sure that the vote by mail process works as smoothly as possible. Most recently, you may have been aware that the Trump administration filed a lawsuit in New Jersey against the universal vote by mail process. There are 5 states in the U.S. that have had vote by mail exclusively for a long time. And there are 5 more states for this election that are going to do all vote by mail. New Jersey is one of them. And because of that, the Trump administration targeted New Jersey and the other states and filed a lawsuit. So we, plus the NAACP, have become a friend of, if you will, filing on behalf of Governor Murphy to not get the decision overturned that this election can be a vote by mail election. So far, so good. But again, we have to remain vigilant up and through November that this vote by mail process does not get overturned in any way. So just to start at the basics, who is eligible to vote, to register to vote in New Jersey? Anyone, obviously, who's a U.S. citizen. You have to be at least 17 years old, but you can't vote until you're 18. So if you turn 18 by November 3rd, then you can vote in this election. You have to be a resident of New Jersey in the county in which you live for 30 days before the election, and you can't be currently serving a sentence for incarceration of a felony. However, just this year, you might be aware that the legislature passed that individuals can now vote while they're on parole or probation, which means that 80,000 New Jerseyans now are eligible to vote this year that were not eligible to vote before. But if they want to vote, they need to re-register again, even if they were registered before. So if you're on parole or probation, you need to re-register in order to vote in this election. Another new enhancement, and this is available just as of last Friday, is that New Jersey now offers online voter registration. You're probably aware, you've probably seen the League of Women Voter tables, voter registrations of the hand applications, the paper applications, and that's how we've done it forever in New Jersey. But now online voter registration is available, which I think is going to be a big enhancement. And there's the link for people who want to register to vote online. The deadline for registering to vote for the November elections is October 13th. So a word about college students. Some of you may have college students and you probably know this already, but as long as they meet the eligibility requirements, college students have the option to vote either at their home or at their college address. But what I like to remind parents is, because we've had so many campus closures because of COVID, it's incumbent to make sure that your college student's address is current to receive the mail-in ballot. So if they're living at home now with you and not at their college address, make sure that their mail-in ballot address is going to come at home and not to the college. You can use the voter registration form to update an address if you need to. Another way for people to check if you're already registered, there are two ways to check. There's the New Jersey Voter Registration Database, and there's the link there. Or the League of Women Voters also has a big website called Vote 411, which we manage nationally. And you can look up New Jersey and then plug in there your address, and you can find out also if you're already registered. The one thing to keep in mind is that the New Jersey Registered Voter Database does not show 17-year-olds who are registered to vote, only those 18 plus. So I mentioned that the New Jersey general election will primarily be vote by mail. What does that mean? That means that the ballots are going to be mailed to all active registered voters, and an active registered voter is someone who hasn't basically had their ballots returned from the post office in prior elections. So a registered voter will be deemed inactive when ballots or other mail that's been addressed to them has been returned by the U.S. Post Office. Inactive voters do remain registered, though, until they miss 2 federal elections. This year, the ballots expect to be mailed out by the county clerks no later than October 5th. So what I tell people is that starting October 12th, maybe a week later, if you haven't received your ballot, then you can start contacting the county clerk. And everyone should know is that the ballots will have the return envelope, and it'll have a prepaid first-class postage, so you don't have to put postage on it. So how do you, after you've filled out your ballot, how do you return it? Certainly by mail. It has to be postmarked on or before Election Day, and it has to be received no later than 8 p.m. on November 10th. So that's a longer period of time than we had in the May elections, where we had only 48 hours in May, but now we're up to 7 days for the November election. And even ballots with no postmark will be accepted through 8 p.m. on November 5th. The other key way you can do it is to use the secure drop boxes. And again, those have to be dropped in no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day. The state has promised that there's going to be at least 10 drop boxes by county. There'll be more or less depending on the population size. So for example, in Essex County, we'll have a lot more, like maybe 17 or 18 drop boxes than in counties with less population. They're working on the final drop box locations now. That should be done shortly. They expect, you may have seen, drop boxes are already starting to go up, and voters will get a postcard with a list of Dropbox locations to all active voters, will be sent out latest October 23rd. The other way that you can return your vote by mail ballot is to go to your assigned polling place on Election Day. And again, the polling place locations will be provided also on that postcard where the Dropbox locations are going to be sent. And if you do that, a poll worker will verify that you're in the poll book. And just to note, you can only deliver your own ballot to the polling location, not others. You can also, of course, deliver it directly to the County Board of Elections. For us, that's on Dr. Martin Luther King Drive in Newark, and if you're in Essex County. You can do that on or before Election Day. You'll need to sign the envelope and show an ID to the election worker who will receive it. And you can deliver ballots of 3 people, up to 3 people, if you're delivering it to the County Board of Elections. And lastly, and this is probably the least way we recommend, the League of Women Voters recommends, you can vote in person at your assigned polling place. Again, that, as I said, the polling place locations will be on that postcard that's going to be mailed out. There'll be at least 1 polling place in each municipality, but for this election, they're promising at least 50% of the normal polling places should be open. But if you go in person to your polling place, you're going to be using a paper provisional ballot, okay? And the reason that is, a provisional ballot means that it's going to be provisional until it's accepted after the election results are tabulated. And this is, if you recall, President Trump recently was encouraging people to test the system and vote by mail as well as vote in person. Well, this is one of the fail-safes, because if you've mailed in your paper ballot and then try to vote in person to your polling location, that vote will be provisional until they cross-check that provisional ballot to the mail-in ballots received. So that's how they have some checks and balances. That's the checks and balances to make sure you're not double voting. However, there will be accommodations made for people with disabilities. So there will be voting machines for people in wheelchairs or for blind people or people who need help. But note that the polling locations, if you go in person, they will be following the state safety guidelines. So there will be proper social distancing and disinfecting, in between voting, etc. So the 3 public questions that will be on the ballot in November, and you're probably familiar with these, but the first one is the property tax deduction and exemption for peacetime veterans. This is giving a $250 property tax deduction for veterans who did not actually serve in a war. And then an exemption for disabled, a total exemption for disabled veterans. So again, veterans who have served in a war have already had this, but now this is extending it to veterans who served not in a war. The next one has gotten not as much attention probably, but maybe it will be up in November as we lead up into November, which is legalizing marijuana in New Jersey for people over 21, and it will be taxed. And then the last one is to change the legislative redistricting schedule because if the census is delayed. Obviously, the way that the districts in the legislature are set up are on a schedule, but if the census is delayed, the results of the census are not available, then of course it makes sense to delay the redistricting until the most accurate and up-to-date census results are received. So those are the public questions. So just some resources that you might use if you have, if you forget everything that I've told you today, which you might have between now and November, then you can download, there's a nice app that you can get on your phone, which is the Division of Elections app from the state of New Jersey. And it has everything on, voting registration, checking whether I'm registered, where do I vote, how do I do vote by mail, et cetera, important dates, and even election results. So that's a nice resource. Again, the League of Women Voters also has our resource, which is the Vote 411 website, which also provides similar information, and that's a national website, but you can plug in New Jersey and it will give you information for that. And if all else fails, you can also text us. This is the text. This is a number for the League of Women Voters in New Jersey. And if you text a question or a concern, particularly as we get closer to voting day, hopefully someone will be able to get back to you and help you out. Okay, so with that, those are all the, I think, the pertinent information that you need for the November election. So now turning to how you can get involved. As I mentioned, you're welcome to join the League of Women Voters if you want to be involved in things like voter registration, vote by mail, education, getting out the vote activities. We do candidates forum. In Montclair, the Montclair area, what we're particularly focused on for Get Out the Vote and registration are young people, homebound seniors, the homeless, all of whom have specific issues and are somewhat neglected populations and sometimes find it hard to get the right information. So we're doing as much as we can, particularly in Newark, Irvington, Oranges, and the Oranges, et cetera, to try and work with those populations. The League also has a blog. Literally, there's 100 days. We started this in the summer, 100 days and 100 ways to get ready for Election Day. So it gives 100 ideas on how people can get ready for Election Day. So you can check that out, and that will give you some ideas, a lot of ideas, actually. But, closer to home, what we say is it's important to have a voting plan for yourself and making sure that your family and friends do too. I've made sure, I made sure starting in May that my kids are all registered and they're registered at the right addresses, that they know how to fill out their vote by mail ballots, that they fill in their ballots and, send them in. They understand that, they can't even show up at my house if they haven't voted. So it's clear that they got to get with the program. So it's important that you share, with your family and friends, what your plan is, and that might prompt them to have a plan as well. I think another thing that people can do is to correct misinformation about vote by mail on your social media and in your conversations with your friends and family. There's definitely a concerted effort going on to cast doubt on doing vote by mail. And we've seen it on social media. We've seen it just, I belong to, next door neighbor, these, not even Facebook or Instagram, whatever, but even some of the very, hyper local sites where people, again, it's kind of like wearing a mask, where we're conflating something which is absolutely neutral and nonpartisan, like vote by mail, is all of a sudden becoming a partisan political issue, which it should not be. Vote by mail has been shown, the studies that I've shown, is that it increases voter turnout by around 10 to 12% in the states that have gone to it. And we saw a big increase. I don't remember the exact figures, but in the July primaries, we also saw a big increase in our first big vote by mail effort in New Jersey. But it helps both Republicans and Democrats. It's not a partisan tool, if you will. Vote by mail helps both parties. And if you think of it, particularly in an environment where public health has got to be a first priority, and we don't want to have people's health concerns prevent them from casting their ballot, vote by mail is a wonderful way for people to participate in democracy without having to sacrifice their health and stand in line, at a polling location. So anything that you can do to correct misinformation about vote by mail on your social media probably could help. Another practical thing you might think about is to call our senators, or any senator at this point, to have them include, the League has, as part of a $4 billion, recommendation of $4 billion package in the latest stimulus bills that they're working on to protect this year's election and future elections as well, with vote by mail. And then the last thing is, if you can volunteer to be a poll worker or to work the polls this November, even if you can't, if you know young people who might be in a position health-wise to be able to become a poll worker, the average age of poll workers in New Jersey is quite old. So it's going to be difficult to get many of them to, and rightly so, to be part of working the polls in November. So if you know of young people who can be poll workers, it would be great. So anyway, I've talked way too much, I think. So I'm going to stop now, and I'll take any questions.
Donna, thank you so much. That was really informative. So we do have some questions posted, and I have one that I got by email.
Sure.
But let's see, Carol Katzman, you had a question, and why don't I let you say your own question?
Okay. A friend of mine told me that Bill Maher on his last live show before he went on vacation made the suggestion that the American public should lighten the load, not order packages to be delivered by the post office, pay any bill you can online, prepay any bill, send call Aunt Gertie and wish her a happy birthday as opposed to sending a card, to lighten the load of mail from the beginning of October till maybe a week after Election Day, to lighten the load for postal workers so they could concentrate. And then ironically, the other day I was at the September 11th memorial in Essex County, and I walked past a gentleman who had said, the post office on it, and I asked him about it, and I said, "What did you think?" He says he thought it was a great idea. What do you think?
I mean, I watched Bill Maher too, and I thought, I think if nothing more than symbolically, to do that is a great idea. The post office claims, even despite what we're reading about, the attempted dismantling of the post office claims that their Christmas rush, they are able to handle an enormous volume. So they claim that they're able to handle vote by mail. But let's see. In May in New Jersey, they weren't. We had our post office in Montclair, one of our post offices closed 4 hours early on election day because they had workers that couldn't, they were short workers because of COVID, for example. So, but that was May, and there's been a lot learned since then. So, I don't know. We're meeting with the Essex County Clerk in about a week, and that's one of the questions that we're asking him is that what is the preparedness that the county election officials are doing to work with the local post office? They claim that they are. At the state level, I know that they are, but even at the local level, to make sure that the post office is prepared as much as possible. I think that can't. I mean, it certainly can't hurt. But I think that if people are really concerned about the post office, what we're telling people is use the drop boxes. Use the drop boxes. They're under 24/7 surveillance. They're empty, meaning video surveillance. They're emptied every night. So I think that the drop boxes in July were a resounding success. The counties were very pleased with the drop boxes. There were no issues. And oh, by the way, I should have said in the July primaries, the uncounted ballots dropped to 2.7%. They were 10% in May, dropped to 2.7% in July. So that's a big improvement. So I think that they are getting better and better, but the county themselves are pushing the drop boxes. That's what I'm going to use.
So Donna, I want to clarify, my husband who's sitting here was muttering at me and saying that he wanted to verify that means that when you put things into the voting drop boxes, that circumvents the mail. It doesn't then go through the mail. It's picked up and delivered directly, right?
Exactly. It does not go through the mail. It's picked up directly by the county election, the Division of Elections, and taken directly to that office in Newark for Essex County. Carolyn.
Carolyn?
Is it your understanding that the polling places will not have a voting machine and that people will bring their paper ballot and put it in a box?
Yes.
There's no machine.
Yes, I mean people should. Yeah, let me be clear on this. We've been told there will be some machines for people who need them, like disabled people, etc. Okay. However, everyone else, if you come to a voting machine, if you come to a polling location, you will vote with a paper provisional ballot.
Why wouldn't you take it?
Or you can drop off your mail-in ballot. directly, you know.
What's
So
the difference between your ballot and the provisional ballot?
your mail-in ballot is your vote. You sign it, you put it in the envelope. You know, when you sign it and put it in the envelope, that is your vote, okay, and that gets delivered. If you go to the polls, you will, and you're a registered voter, you should have gotten a mail-in ballot, right? So they're going to think you just lost it or you can't find it or whatever. So you'll be allowed to vote provisionally using a paper ballot. So it'll be the same ballot, you'll just fill it out, but it won't be counted. It will be held until all the mail-in ballots are counted, and they will count the provisional ballots last. And then they will see if, in fact, your provisional ballot is not a duplicate of one that you sent in mail. So I don't urge people to go in and vote a provisional ballot unless you lost it, okay? Because you're just going to add, you know, work for the system unnecessarily. And it's not going to get your vote counted any quicker or any better. The best thing to do is to make sure you're going to get a mail-in ballot. Expect to see it. If you don't see it by like October 12th, start calling your county clerk to say, where is it? And when you get it, fill it in right away and bring it to a drop box and drop it in. That's the best thing. But if all else fails, tell people, yes, you can go to the polls. If you can't find your mail-in ballot or whatever, if it got lost, you can vote by going to a polling location. But you're going to have to stand in line. You're going to have to, you know, be exposed and whatever. And you're still going to fill out a paper ballot. And it will only be provisional until the county determines that it's not a duplicate. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Eileen, you had a question about checking your ballot. You want to ask that one?
Sure. To ensure that the mail-in counts, because I know there have been problems with signatures that are 30 years old and they tend to change as you get older.
Right.
Should we check to make sure that the ballot has been accepted?
Yes. Sorry, I forgot to put that on my slides. You can track your ballot now. What that means is, let me see, I've got an actual ballot here. I don't know if you can see this, but I'll show you. On the outside of your ballot, there's a barcode, okay? And if you take a picture of that barcode, I blacked it out, you know, because we're using this for something else. But you can take a picture with your your phone of that barcode, and you can track your ballot online. That's part of the database that I talked about. I think it's on the app too. I'm just checking. But if you go on the Division of Elections website, you'll be able to see, you know, where you can vote by mail, where you can register to vote, and where you can see if you're registered, and you can also track your ballot. Let's see. No, it's not on this one.
So Donna, talking about wanting to make sure that your ballot has been accepted, and Eileen brought up the issue of signatures. So if we registered, obviously a long time ago,
Yeah.
and clearly our signature will have changed, should we all be re-registering? I mean, will that overload the system, or is that a good thing to do?
No, I mean, if you were not contacted in July, if any of you voted in the July primaries, and if you were not contacted, that means that your vote went through for the most part, unless it was postmarked too late or whatever. But you can use a voter registration form to update your signature. So if you want to, you can go online, get a form, or do it online. You can update your not the online voter registration. Let me just be clear. I don't want to confuse you. The online voter registration is going to use the signature from your motor vehicle, from your driver's license. Or if you're doing it on a device that accepts signatures, you can sign it on the device. Okay. Otherwise, The signature is going to be from what you do on a voter application, a hard voter application. So you can update your signature by using a paper voter registration application that you can get online and print out. Update your write your signature in, check off that this is a signature update, and that's now what will be your signature going forward. And then what we tell people is, if you're doing that, take a picture of that too, so you remember how you signed it. You know, some people use their initials, some people, you know, they do all kinds of things. But for this election, if your ballot gets rejected or held because of either you forgot to sign it, or the signature is a mismatch, you will be allowed, it's called a curing process. You'll be contacted by the county to say, there's a problem with your ballot. It's either missing a signature or the signature doesn't match. And you'll be given an opportunity to verify that that is your ballot and it's okay, and then it will be counted. So people shouldn't be too concerned about the signature issue anymore. Okay, it was more of an issue in the prior elections.
So if that's the case, is that something that, I know that there's a week in between election day and the deadline. So will that week then be enough? Or if you have concerns about your signature, would you need to have voted earlier to give it time to happen?
No, you'll be contacted right away. I mean, they're not going to be counting ballots until election day, just so that you know, okay? They'll be opening them up, getting them ready, big stacks ready to go to be counted. But no tallying is going to be going on until the polls close on an election day. And that's because, again, for security reasons, that nothing leaks out, who's ahead, who's not ahead, you know, until the polls close.
I have another question about people who are moving.
Yeah.
This might also be appropriate to ask about college students. So we have friends, and this is they emailed this one to me, that they are going to be moving. They're moving from Montclair to another town, West Orange, and they were concerned about what's the legality. They're, you know, what if they register, or what if they use the old address in Montclair, but at that point they're already in West Orange? Is that illegal? So what should they be doing in terms of, because they
should update their address, again, using a voter registration form and just checking off address update. They need to register because they're in a new town, right? So they're
right. But their question is, what if they're not going to be in the new place before October 5th, but they will be in the new place when they vote. So that's their concern. What should they do in between when they get mailed out?
As long as they have to be 30 days, resident 30 days, so they can vote in their old district. Right. Vote in their old district.
Okay, let's see. We have some other questions. Jean, you asked an interesting question about whether about the impact of requesting a mail ballot. If you requested one, rather than having it automatically sent, will you end up receiving it earlier?
No. All the mail-in ballots are going out at the same time. And the latest supposedly is October 5th.
And then, Jean, you also had a question about the Trump lawsuit, whether that could end up illegitimizing the mail-in ballots.
That you know, we think it's very unlikely that lawsuit is going to go through, because there's no basis for it. So, but never say never. That's why we are joining in with the Murphy administration to support the fact that, you know, the governor's actions have merit. They're done in the interest of public health, and they're not done for partisan political reasons. and therefore the suit should be dismissed. So, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
Linda, you had a question?
Yes. Hi. I am going to be using the Dropbox. I believe there's one outside of Montclair Municipal Building on Claremont.
Yep.
So just in case people want to know, I've identified one.
Yep.
But I'm just curious, all these pieces of paper are going to be taken to Martin Luther King Boulevard. Is there a scanner that they're using, or are people just one for you and one for me? How do they do that?
They do have machines that they use, but it's all under, and it's complicated. I don't fully, maybe Carolyn, you remember, but it's complicated because it's all done under the eyes of like 3 Democrats and 3 Republican officials. Okay, so all the counting is done under, it's not just because we have a Democratic, administration in Newark. It's under a bipartisan commission, if you will, that oversees the counting.
Okay, but I worked in an educational system, and they had Scantron. So people are not really looking at it; it's just being pushed through a machine. I don't understand the value of these 3 Democrats and the 3 Republicans.
I think because there's a lot of questions that go on. I think the machine, if there are, I shouldn't really say. I heard it explained once, and I've forgotten now where the machines come in. If they actually do the counting or the sorting. I don't know. I don't remember now how it actually works in the actual tallying. All I know is that there are humans involved overseeing it to ensure that the tally is correct and that it can be challenged at any time, meaning that there are challenges going on all the time if in fact it's not clear what the vote was for, or who the vote was for. I'll have to find out, Linda.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's a curiosity for me, and I'm just curious because with the machines you sort of say pachunk, pachunk, but this is pieces of paper. I just try to wrap my head around it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm looking at the ballot now.
Carolyn, do you know?
I think because there are these codes on the side, I think it probably is run through a machine.
Okay.
I guess it would have to be, because it's not like you're just voting for one thing.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, if you think about everyone tallying up item 1 and then have to tally up item 2, that would really take forever. So I would assume that there has to be some kind of scanning or automation. Yeah.
Although there might be people looking at it as it's going through the machines too.
Carolyn, you have to unmute.
Do you know, Carolyn, how it works? Is she? Oh, maybe. Okay. That's a good question. I will ask.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Carolyn, did you want to add something to that? You unmuted.
No, I just can't imagine it could be done any other way than by machine.
Right.
You're counting the ballot questions as well as the candidates. So that's impossible to get all that done.
Right.
I'm sure.
Can I ask one other question? How could they, so then what's the basis, what's the basis of challenging the voting count? It's not like anybody tampered with anything. It's not like somebody threw
No, but I guess to make sure that nobody's slipping in extra ballots into the machine, or, whatever could go on.
Okay.
I mean, again, there has not been, at that level that I'm aware of, instances of fraud. There may be instances of fraud in other levels of the process, but not from what we've seen at the county level.
Thank you.
when they're actually counting.
Well, that's all the questions that were in the chat. Does anybody else want to unmute and have a question that you would like to ask?
I bet everyone here is registered. Oh, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Okay, Jean, go ahead. Jean, you need to unmute. You're still muted.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm on. Okay. So you mentioned before about postmarking the ballots was a problem back in May, I think you said.
Yes.
So with the drop boxes, is the whole issue of postmarking resolved by using drop boxes? Is that one of the advantages of the drop box?
Yes. Yes. Because if you get it in the box will be emptied that day.
So it's effectively postmarked that day?
No, it's not going to be postmarked at all because you're just dropping it in a box.
Okay.
And the county takes it away. And then the last pickup will be 8 p.m. on November.
So I live in Nutley. How do I find out where my drop box is?
You'll be getting a card in the mail. You should be getting a postcard in the mail where the drop box locations are going to be.
Okay.
And there should be at least one in Nutley.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Donna, there was a question about whether or not you could provide the slides because there were some links and information. So if you
Sure.
can send that to me, I can post that on our online newsletter.
Absolutely happy to. And and then you can also share my contact information, Sarita. And seriously, if anybody runs into any issues or has concerns, if their family and friends have issues, feel free to contact me. We have 10 town teams that we have set up throughout Essex County for this. So to deal with the election. So we've got something like 350 volunteers that are working to help us on this. So we can get help if we need to. We can get you help.
Yeah, I have a list. Donna actually sent me a list of the teams now, so I have that and I'll post that as well.
Great.
So that if people want to join a team, they can contact the team leaders directly. Yeah.
We would love that. If you want to help, and a lot of what we do is you don't have to do in-person voter registration because, a lot of people are concerned about doing any public events in person. We totally understand it. But if you want to do a voter education thing, just like I'm doing with you in turn share information via Google Meets or Zoom with a group of people, that also counts too, because there's a lot of, this is a new process. It's not how we've been doing it. There's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation, and it's confusing. It's confusing. There's no doubt about it.
Well, Donna, I want to thank you very much for coming and talking with us today. Thank everybody who attended. I think this was really informative and really great. And we can have our virtual applause.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much.
Yeah. And I'll get these slides and I will post them as well as the recording will be posted as well.
Okay, great. And get out the vote.
Yes. Yes. Talk to people and encourage other people to register and to vote.
Exactly. Thanks again.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Pleasure.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.